Hello and welcome to my Specialization Introduction and Outdoor Content Guide for the Protection Paladin in World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth. If you haven't watched the primer video for this series, I recommend that you do that now. There'll be a link in the description below, and that will just get you up to speed on what we're doing in this video. So we're here on our Protection Paladin. We've got our action bars visible and clear. If we go into our talent tree, these are the talents you can select to fulfill the requirements laid out in the primer video. With that said, we're going to get into our spell book, but before we start organizing our spells, I want to make it clear that this is an outdoor content guide for a tanking specialization. It is not a guide for tanking in dungeons or raids, so we're going to be focused on, how do we level, quest, farm better on this particular character, which means we are going to overlook or underemphasize a lot of skills and talents that are good in that particular environment in order to focus on the stuff that's going to help us do that outdoor content better. So keep that in mind as we go forward. And with that said, we're going to start organizing our spells. I'm not going to give a really in-depth description for every single one of these, but I will at least give a brief description so you know what the spell does and why we're putting it into the category that we are. So we're going to start with Argent Defender. This is a defensive cooldown. You can trigger this to get damage reduction. And the next attack that would kill you while this is active will instead bring you to 20% of your maximum health. Avengers Shield is part of our core rotation. Avenging Wrath is an offensive cooldown we can use to increase our damage, healing, and critical strike chance by 20% for 20 seconds. Blessing of Freedom. This is a combat utility ability we probably won't use very often, but it will grant a party or raid member immunity from movement impairing effects for 8 seconds. We have Blessing of Protection. This is a defensive cooldown. It will make your target immune to physical damage and harmful effects for 10 seconds, but then it will apply a debuff to that target called Forbearance. And Forbearance is a debuff that's in a few of the Paladin abilities. And basically, if you have Forbearance, you can't be affected by an ability that would give you Forbearance after you use it. Next, we have Blessing of Sacrifice. We're going to put this over in our miscellaneous section. We're probably not going to use this much in outdoor content at all, but this will bless a party or raid member, and it will reduce their damage taken by 30%, but then you suffer 100% of that damage. So it doesn't really work too well on you in outdoor content. That's why it's going over here. Next, we have Cleanse Toxins. This will remove all poison and disease effects from the target's combat utility ability we're probably not going to use very often. Consecration is part of our core rotation. Divine Shield is a defensive cooldown we can use. It grants you immunity to all damage and harmful effects for 8 seconds, and this will cause Forbearance, and you can't use it if you have Forbearance, or you can't be affected by it if you have Forbearance. Next, we have Divine Steed. This is a combat utility ability. It puts you on top of your mount and gives you 100% movement speed burst for 3 seconds. You can use it indoors, so a nice movement utility ability. Flash of Light is a quick, expensive heal that we can use to top ourselves off pretty quickly. Guardian of Ancient Kings. This is a defensive cooldown that we can use to reduce all damage we take by 50% for 8 seconds. Hammer of Justice is a 6-second stun that goes in our crowd control section. Hammer of the Righteous is part of our core rotation. Hand of Reckoning is the Paladin Taunt, which we're not going to use very often in open world content, but it does have some limited application. You can taunt a melee enemy over to you to get them to come over if you need to. Judgement is part of our core rotation. Lay on Hands is another defensive cooldown we could use. It will heal a friendly target for an amount equal to your maximum health. You can use this on yourself. It does cause Forbearance as well. Rebuke is our interrupt ability. It will interrupt spell casting. That goes in our crowd control. We do have Redemption. This is a single target resurrection spell. It'll bring a friendly character back to life. Only usable outside of combat, so we'll put that over here. Shield of Righteous is part of our core rotation, and that covers all of the active abilities that we have as the Protection Paladin. So, what are the resources we have available? Well, we only have one, and that would be mana. We get a certain amount of mana. We start combat with a full pool of mana, and then we will spend that on abilities. In outdoor content, this is kind of an irrelevant resource. You don't really have to worry about managing too much, but if for some reason you did run out of it, you won't be able to cast some of your spells and abilities. So now that we covered that, let's take a look at what the core rotation in the outdoor content is for the Protection Paladin. So we've got 5 abilities down here, and they all kind of interweave with each other. The first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to cast our Consecration. Consecration is a area of effect damaging ability. It puts down an area of effect on the ground beneath you, and then it will deal damage to any enemies who stand in it over 12 seconds. So we're going to put that down first. Then we want to cast our Avengers Shield. This is an ability on a 13-second cooldown. You throw your shield at an enemy. It deals a good amount of damage. It interrupts their spell cast, silences them as well for 3 seconds, and then the shield will jump and hit 2 more enemies. This will also increase the effects of your next Shield of Righteous by 20%. So after we cast Avengers Shield, we're going to want to cast our Shield of the Righteous. Shield of the Righteous is a instant cast ability with a 16-second recharge. It has 3 charges, so you can use it 3 times in a row. Then you have to wait for all those charges to recharge. It slams enemies in front of you, so multiple enemies, causing a small amount of damage, and then it increases your armor by a significant amount for 4.5 seconds. Okay, so after we cast our Avengers Shield, we get 20% more damage from that Shield of the Righteous. So we'll cast at least one of those. Then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to cast Judgement. Judgement is an instant ability with a 5.3 second cooldown. It deals a pretty good amount of damage to the target, then reduces the cooldown on our Shield of the Righteous, which is our little Shield Slam 3 charge ability, by 2 seconds, or if Judgement critically hits, it reduces it by 4 seconds. So as we use Judgement, we'll reduce the cooldown on that Shield of the Righteous and get those charges back faster so that we can use them again. Finally, we have our Hammer of the Righteous. This is kind of our filler ability. It's got a 3.9 second recharge. It comes with 2 charges. It deals a little bit of damage. But if we're standing in our Consecration, it also causes a wave of light that hits all other targets within 8 yards for 119 holy damage. So it does a little bit of AoE. So let's go down and check out the rotation. So we're going to go up to our target. We'll use this guy. Oh, here we go. We're going to use our Consecration. Then we're going to cast our Avengers Shield. That's going to bounce to some targets. We're going to get the buff that makes our next Shield of the Righteous deal 20% damage. So we're going to hit that 1 time. Then we go ahead and cast our Judgement. That's going to put our Judgement on cooldown. And while we're waiting for that, we'll use our Hammer of the Righteous. And we can use that a couple of times. So that's going to look a little bit differently when we're doing it at full speed. Let's run through slowly one more time. Consecration into Avengers Shield. Then we use our Shield of Righteous, our Judgement, and then we go over and we start casting Hammer of Righteous. Now, Consecration, we're going to want to renew that anytime it goes away. So let's do that at full speed now. Alright, so we're going to Consecrate, Avengers Shield, Hammer of Righteous into Judgement. Then we're going to cast our, Shield of the Righteous, then into Hammer of the Righteous. Then our Judgement comes back on cooldown. We hit that. Going to redo our Consecrate. Our Avengers Shield is off cooldown. So we use that into Shield of the Righteous, Judgement, Hammer of the Righteous, Hammer of the Righteous. Refresh our Consecration. And when we're waiting for our shield to come up, we can either cast Judgement again or Hammer of the Righteous. Just depends on what you want to do. Now, as far as your other charges of Shield of the Righteous goes, you can spin those all at the same time if you want to. But that's entirely up to you whether you want to conserve those charges to deal some burst damage or you just want to front load it all into your enemy and kill them off. So that's it. That's a core rotation for the Protection Paladin. So the next thing we're going to do is get into our talent tree, try to create a build that works well in open world content. So let's go ahead and set that up. Okay, so this is the build that I recommend you use in outdoor content. It's not the only one that you could use, but it's the one I like, recommend, and will be showing off at the end of this video. We're going to go through each of the talents, talk about what they do and why we've chosen them for the build, and we're starting with Blessed Hammer. So Blessed Hammer will replace our Hammer of the Righteous. So if we switch this back over real quick, here's our Hammer of the Righteous. That did a little bit of damage and then put the Wave of Light out that dealt some multi-target damage if we were standing in Consecration. Blessed Hammer changes that ability to Blessed Hammer. This throws a hammer that spirals outward, dealing damage to enemies and weakening them, reducing the damage they take from your next auto attack by 12%. And it comes with 3 charges instead of 2. So, what this will do is you'll throw out this spinny hammer. This can hit a target multiple times. So, unlike our Hand of the Righteous, which hits one target and then kind of does a multi-target thing if we're in Consecration, this will just flat out deal AoE damage, and it can hit a target multiple times. So it's a little bit of a more hands-off ability. It's got the 3 charges, so you can get 3 hammers going at once. Like if you wanted to, you could cast it again, and cast it again, so you could really pump out some multi-target damage there if you wanted to. Next up, we have First Avenger. Avengers Shield now deals 50% increased damage to the first target hit. So when we cast the shield, we're going to deal a big chunk of damage to our main target. And Grand Crusader now has an additional 10% chance to occur. Well, what's Grand Crusader? Well, for that, we've got to get into the passive abilities of the Protection Paladin. And there's a reason that we didn't talk about these before, and that's because for the most part, they're either irrelevant or you can't actually see what they do against a target dummy. So, our mastery is Divine Bulwark. This reduces all damage we take while inside our Consecration, and increases our chance to block melee attacks as well. This will also increase our attack power, so we'll get some more damage off of that. Next up, we have Heart of the Crusader. You move 20% faster while mounted. This doesn't stack with other movement speed increasing effects, so basically, you're just faster when you're on your mount. Grand Crusader, which is the ability listed in our talent for First Avenger, says when you avoid a melee attack, which the target dummy is not attacking us, so you can't see that, or you use Hammer of the Righteous, which we did have, you have a 25% chance to reset the remaining cooldown on Avengers Shield. So remember, Avengers Shield it hits our target, it bounces, and it makes the effect of our next Shield of Righteousness. It deals increases their effects by 20%. So, using our Hammer of the Righteous is not a great way to see that in action. This ability actually happens a lot when you're getting attacked. So we won't be able to really show this off until we get out into our build demo in the open world. But just know that with First Avenger, we deal a nice chunk of damage to the first target hit by our Avengers Shield, and Grand Crusader has a 10% additional chance to occur. Alright, so it goes from 15% to 25%. So that's going to mean that we're going to get to reset the cooldown on our shield a lot, which means we're going to get that bonus for our Shield of the Righteous a lot more, and then that's where it makes a little more sense to have those 3 charges of Shield of the Righteous. Next we have Blinding Light. This is a crowd control ability, 1.5 minute cooldown. It emits dazzling light in all directions. This blinds all enemies within 10 yards. This causes them to wander disoriented for 6 seconds, and non-holy damage will break the disorient effect. But luckily all of our spells, for the most part, deal holy damage. So this effect should not break because of our damage most of the time. Next we have Cavalier. Cavalier just gives Divine Steed 2 charges. So Divine Steed, like I said, it'll mount you up. It'll give you a 100% movement speed increase for 3 seconds. And with this talent, we now get 2 charges, so we can just Divine Steed more, and that will help us get around a lot more a lot faster, especially indoors, because we can use that ability indoors. And we don't have a lot of ways to increase our mobility on the Paladin, so this really does help quite a lot. Next, we have Hand of the Protector. This replaces Light of the Protector. So if we go ahead and switch off this real quick. Light of the Protector, which I somehow missed when I was putting these on the thing down here. This is a combat utility ability, 15-second cooldown. It calls down the light to heal you for a large portion based, and this is increased by up to 200% based on your missing health. Oh, and I missed it because we had Hand of the Protector. So Hand of the Protector does the same thing, but it has a little bit of a shorter cooldown. Alright. So this just gives us a little bit better healing. We got access to this a lot quicker. Usually on the Protection Paladin, you do have your flash of light if you need to heal yourself, but a lot of times you're just going to wait until you get pretty low, and then you'll cast your Hand of the Protector on yourself, and that's going to get you healed back up pretty significantly. Next, we have Consecrated Ground. Your Consecration is 15% larger, which means A, we can move around in it more. B, it can hit more enemies. And then also enemies within it have 50% reduced movement speed. So this means if an enemy tries to run away from us, they're probably going to be in our Consecration, so we have a little bit of time to try to finish them off before they get away. But mainly we're just looking for that 15% larger size on the Consecration, and also the other talents on this tier basically focus on healing and don't help us to do anything as far as damage goes. And then finally we have Last Defender. Each enemy within 8 yards will reduce the damage that you take and increase the damage that you deal by 3%. So the more enemies we're fighting, the more damage we deal and the less damage we take. And that's great. If we're fighting a single target, we get 3% damage reduction, 3% increased damage on our abilities. So this doesn't change our rotation too much. It's going to be hard to see the true rotation until we start getting attacked. But you're still going to go up. You're going to hit your Consecration into Avengers Shield, into your Shield of the Righteous, your Judgement. You can get your Blessed Hammer going. And we did get a proc right there of Grand Crusader, which reset our Avengers Shield. And then we can go into Shield of the Righteous. Back into our Judgement. Cast our Blessed Hammer again. Avengers Shield, Shield of Righteous, Judgement, Blessed Hammer. We're going to want to keep our Consecration going. But this brings me to one other point with our Blessed Hammer. When we cast Blessed Hammer, it essentially replaces our Hammer of the Righteous and has that chance to reduce the cooldown on Avengers Shield. And because it's dealing damage to multiple targets repeatedly, it increases the chance that that's going to happen. As you can see, we're getting that ability quite often, and that's the reason why. So, Consecration into Avengers Shield. We're going to Shield of the Righteous, Judgement, Blessed Hammer. Go back, we can hit another Shield of the Righteous, or we could cast Blessed Hammer again. And we just kind of cycle through that over and over again. And this will make more sense once we're out there and we're getting the full benefits of Grand Crusader, because we'll be avoiding melee attacks and getting those Grand Crusader procs a lot more often. Alright, so the last thing to do here before we get out there and try out the build is to talk about the PvP talents you could take if you want to toggle on War Mode and mainly focus on PvE. So First off, we got Relentless. This will replace your Honorable Medallion. It'll turn it into a passive ability that will reduce the duration of incoming crowd control effects by 20%. It's a nice kind of set it and forget it ability. We have Steed of Glory. Your Divine Steed lasts for an additional 2 seconds, so we get 5 seconds of 100% increased movement speed. While active, you become immune to movement impairing effects, so nothing can slow you down. And you knock back enemies that you move through, which is just like really cool to watch. So we're doing this for that increased mobility. Like I said, it does make a pretty big difference on a Paladin to have that. Next, we have Warrior Light. Nice Final Fantasy reference there. Increases the damage done by your Shield of the Righteous by 30%, but reduces the armor granted by 30%. So we don't really need the armor on Shield of the Righteous to stay alive in open world content, but we could use that 30% extra damage on Shield of the Righteous. So this helps us output a little bit more damage. And finally, Unbound Freedom. Blessing of Freedom also increases movement speed by 30%. So if you have this talent selected, now your Blessing of Freedom, which we put over here because we were like, we're probably not going to use that very often. Every 25 seconds, you may not need that immunity to movement impairing effects, but every 25 seconds, you get 30% increased movement speed buff. And once again, we already talked about mobility, so that's a nice ability to have. Alright, so the next thing to do is take this build out into the open world, show it off against some different enemies, so I'm going to cut to that, and I will see you there. Alright, so we're here in Suramar City, and we're just going to fly down and try out the build against some different enemies, so let's go ahead and do that. And keep in mind, we are going to see that Grand Crusader ability proc a lot more often, so we're going to do a little bit more weaving between our Avengers Shield and our Shield of the Righteous. So we'll go up and throw down our Consecration, we hit our Avengers Shield, go into our Shield of the Righteous, this target's dead. We do got our Avenging Shield here. Now, you don't always have to start with Consecration if you don't want to. Part of this build is we no longer get that extra effect from Hammer of the Righteous, so we don't really need that. You could just open up with Avengers Shield, go into your Shield of the Righteous, Avengers Shield, because we got the proc there, and then we can hit our Shield of the Righteous again on that target. So we'll go Consecration. We want to use our Judgement to reduce the cooldown of Shield of the Righteous. Basically, anytime we get that Avengers Shield, we can hit it for massive damage, but we want to try to weave it where we do Avengers Shield, Shield of the Righteous, Avengers Shield, Shield of the Righteous. Now, we haven't even started to use this Blessed Hammer because we really haven't needed to. But let's get a couple of enemies here so we can consecrate. We got this guy. We'll interrupt his spell cast, so he's got to come over to us. We'll put out our Blessed Hammer. We've got our Shield of the Righteous into Shield Block, into Judgment, and dead. Alright, so what we really want to do on a Protection Paladin, we have all this tank ability, we've got good AoE. We really just want to go really ham here. Get as many of these enemies as we can. Let's just say bring it on. Let's go. Put down our Consecration. Start going on our Blessed Hammer. Activate our Avengers Shield. Blessed Hammer again. Shield of the Righteous. Avengers Shield. Shield of the Righteous. Go ahead and put out that Blessed Hammer. Make sure our Consecration stays up. We can throw out another Blessed Hammer. Avengers Shield. Get all that AoE going. Our health is getting kind of low. We can hand to the Protector. Get right back up to full. Consecration. Blessed Hammer. Got our Avengers Shield. There we go. And we are just cranking out the damage here. Alright. So that is really what you want to do on a Protection Paladin. You've got lots and lots of defensive tools. I didn't use any cooldowns, offensive or defensive there, unless you want to count Hand of the Protector with a 13-second cooldown. And we just pulled like this entire area And because we have so much AoE, we got Consecrate. We got the Avengers Shield, which hits a bunch of targets. We got our Shield of the Righteous, which deals damage to enemies in front of us. We got Blessed Hammer, which deals damage to everybody around us. Because we have so much AoE damage, we can usually kill things fast enough that we might have to heal like one time. So that's really what you want to do on the Protection Paladin. You know, don't do this, I'm going to hit one thing and kill that and then go to the next thing. No, just go through, grab as much stuff as you possibly can, given your level of comfort with the specialization, with the rotation. So maybe you start with 2 or 3 enemies, and then you can work your way up to doing something like what I just did there. But that's what you want to do. You want to work up, build up to where you're more and more comfortable with being able to take on a bunch of enemies at once, run through an area, grab them all, and mow them down. So, if you do want to take out a single target, you're not quite as good at that. So we're going to show off how you could possibly do that here. After we clear these guys out. Alright, so the one way that you can do that, you can take out a enemy a little bit faster, is to go ahead and use your Avenging Wrath, right? So we're going to hit Avenging Wrath. We're going to use our Shield, Shield of the Righteous, just start pumping out our abilities here. And as you can tell, it still ain't the fastest thing in the world, but it gets the job done. You do have to use a 2-minute cooldown to do something like that, but against a rare spawn or elite that you're probably not going to encounter, you know, repeatedly, you could use that 2-minute cooldown. So real quickly, I wanted to go over and just kind of show this off one more time, what you want to do with the Protection Paladin. So what we're going to do is, we've got an elite here, we've got a bunch of demons. We're just going to grab as much stuff as we can, say, hey, follow me. Let's go. How about you guys? You guys want to come over? Get everything we can. Hey, come on, come on, come on. Let's go. Alright, so we're going to focus on this elite. We're going to drop Consecration, Avenging Wrath. We're going to get our hammer going. Shield of the Righteous. Just keep pumping this stuff out. Alright, we're stunned. No big deal there. We're just hitting that every time it comes up. Hand of the Protector to get our health back up. If we really need to, we can heal ourselves with our Flash of Light. I was having some issues there because I was facing the wrong way with the targeting, but I mean, and we got this guy over here thinking he's slick. Alright, so as you can see, I still didn't have to use any of my defensive cooldowns, and as a tanking specialization, you have a lot of them. So if, you know, that situation did get too hairy, you know, I've got 5 different abilities over here I can use to keep myself from dying. So that's what you want to do on the Protection Paladin. I hope this video has helped you to understand a little bit more about the specialization, giving you the confidence to get on your own Protection Paladin, get out there in the open world, start questing, leveling, farming, try it out, see if it's something you want to play in Battle for Azeroth. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, whatever you want to do to encourage me to keep making this type of content. I hope you have a great time in Battle for Azeroth, and really, thank you for watching.